Beware, I live.
I am here and geared up for Wargaming.net, Chris Cook, and everything that the world of free-to-play has to offer this evening.
Yes, Wargaming America.
World of Tanks.
What would you refer to them as, James? I've seen it both ways. I've seen Wargaming.net and Wargaming America.
I know that the company is Wargaming.net, and the Chris Cook, who we're speaking with today, is the senior PR manager of Wargaming America. They have huge markets, I believe, in, according to that most recent interview, both Russia and I think Korea or something along those lines.
I think China, Russia, Europe, North America.
So there may be like Wargaming China, Wargaming Russia, and we're speaking to the PR representative from Wargaming America. But as far as I understand it, the entire umbrella company is called Wargaming.net.
Okay.
Wait, we're interviewing the Umbrella Corporation? Oh, Umbrella Company. I'm sorry, parent. Okay. I understand now.
Yes.
That is another thing we're going to have to talk about in the near future is the Resident Evil.
But not tonight, because it's the bonus round of the Double Plus Good Games podcast with our guest, senior PR of Wargaming America, Chris Cook.
He is good. He is not going to let me get off task or off
point. We are
point.
not here to talk about Resident Evil. We are not here to talk about anything else but free to play. Amazon.com, who's been so generous to grant us this opportunity this evening for the Double Plus Good Games podcast. And while you wait, you should check out, as it's free of charge, go to worldoftanks.com or read James Bacon's take on World of Tanks at doubleplusgoodgames.com.
Yeah, excellent job on that, James. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Love the screen grabs too.
I've been doing so many screen grabs recently. It's like whenever I log onto my computer, I immediately boot up Fraps. I wish it had a boot up on load option, because I always bring it up. And as I'm writing this review, I'm like, man, I'm going to have to go hunting for screenshots. Wait a minute. No, I'm not. I already have Fraps up. Let me just take some screens, because it really it localizes the experience. The readers now know that I've played it. These are screenshots that I got from my garage in my play sessions. This is my favorite tank. Hey, look, here's a picture of it. And it really kind of helps. There's a certain amount of intimacy that is the result of that. And I know it's silly to talk about in those terms, but there you have it.
I'd say intimacy, and it personalizes the experience.
Yeah.
You like that? That's nice.
That's good. I like
we should
that.
bounce it off of some PR guy sometime to see what
I was just going to say, we should slap that on a cereal box.
You know what I like even more, though? I love Amazon.com and how they've recently introduced Game Connect, adding new digital game selection and direct delivery of virtual content to customers' game accounts. Customers can now discover an entirely new selection of free-to-play and massively multiplayer online games on Amazon, including Battlestar Galactica, World of Tanks, Pandora Saga, Stronghold Kingdoms, and Super Monday Night Combat, as well as dozens of others. Game Connect helps game developers reach more customers and sell more virtual goods and subscriptions. You can check all of this out at amazon.com/free-to-play. That's FREE, the number 2, PLAY. Start gaming right now.
That's fantastic.
Hey, I have a question.
Yes.
It's okay. I have a question, to ask Mr. Chris Cook when he's on the show. This isn't, I'm asking you a question right now. Recently, the guys over at worldoftanks.com put up a video outlining their new physics engine. It's included in the review that I wrote. This was a big decision for them. And I think that if we could ask a question as far as why they're doing it now, what other sorts of systems had they considered, against the physics, that they decided to go with the physics first. So that's sort of a question to really kind of get into World of Tanks.
I forbid it. No questions.
And don't forget, beyond this podcast, once our 30 to 45 minutes of fame is up, Listeners can check out more of World of Tanks at youtube.com/user/worldoftanks.com. That's all one word, WORLDOFTANKSCOM. You can also check them out on Twitter at their Twitter handle of @WorldOfTanks, just like it sounds. And if you still haven't had your fix, check them out on Facebook.com/WorldOfTanks.
You're good at this. You're really good at this.
That's 30 years of this Stern Show in me.
Wow.
And if you didn't know, World of Tanks was nominated for a Golden Joystick Award in the Best MMO category. Do your part and vote. It's unbelievable. You can learn more about it at Facebook.com/WorldOfTanks.
Also, if you go over to worldoftanks.com, they're actually running player contests for their Golden Joystick voting, where you can create videos. You could go to the website and check it out. Again, that's worldoftanks.com. And they reward you with in-game currencies, gold, which is the currency for cash, as well as credits. So if you're interested in, making videos for tanks and helping people vote for them, you can head on over to the website and check that out. These people have like 30 million active users. I can't imagine them not winning the Golden Joystick Award. It seems like it's a shoo-in to me. But
so, Anthony, I'm going to start this off. You good?
Mm-hmm.
James, you ready to go?
I am.
All right. Let's see if we can get him on here. Hang on a sec.
Connecting to Wargaming America's senior PR manager, Chris Cook, in 3, 2, 1.
Is this Mr. Chris Cook?
That is me.
Wargaming America's senior PR manager, Chris Cook. Ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
So, Chris, thank you so much for taking time out this afternoon.
Cool. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, without further ado, Anthony.
Chris, I want to welcome you aboard this special bonus round episode of the Double Plus Good Games podcast. Been looking forward to this. I feel this is a very exciting episode we're doing. I kind of look at this as kind of an educational process for our listeners to kind of let them know a little bit more what's going on with the free to gaming sector, maybe a little bit of Amazon.com, and more specifically later on a little bit more of what's going on with World of Tanks.
Sure.
But right off the bat here, if you can just tell us a little bit about Wargaming.net, the company, their origins, their background, kind of what their MO is.
Yeah, sure. So the company was founded in 1998 by a couple brothers, Victor and Eugene Kisley. They got a little seed money from their dad. They're from Belarus, the city of Minsk. And as kids growing up in what was then, I guess, Soviet Russia, they were really into strategy games. And Victor specifically, he's incredibly intelligent guy. Education in physics, was the chess champion when he was a kid. So he loves strategy. And as kids growing up behind, I guess, the Iron Curtain, like a lot of what they ended up playing were strategy games. And sort of, I guess, sort of the first genesis of what eventually became Wargaming.net and later Wargaming America and all of our various offices was they would put together sort of these little strategy games that they made up. They'd play them on the kitchen floor. And as they got older and sort of learned more about computers and programming, they took that sort of passion for strategy and transitioned that into what eventually became Wargaming. As I mentioned, the company was started in 1998. Their first games, and pretty much a lot of their games for the next decade, were PC strategy turn-based kinds of experiences, sort of harkening back to those early roots and passions that they had.
That's actually rather interesting. Their passion kind of led to what they're doing today. It's just something they love and kind of made something out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as the company has grown and as sort of the gaming landscape has evolved, obviously, we've gotten away from, as a company, those traditional military turn-based strategy games that we started off as. But, I think looking at where we are now with World of Tanks, we've got World of Warplanes coming up, we've got World of Warships, you can sort of still see that reverence and that interest in military history and warfare sort of transitioned into a sort of new experience in terms of gaming.
Yeah, and actually that's a very good point you bring up, talking about turn-based and thinking of what you guys are doing. So obviously they seem to like more of the action on the fly, the real-time type strategy, which I'm actually a fan of as well.
Yeah, I think they sort of looked at it from a perspective of, well, for 10 years we did our best and we did a great job and put out a lot of good games for the PC that were turn-based military strategy games. But I think at one point, I remember I've talked to Victor about this before, is that the rise of the MMO sort of opened their eyes to what other possibilities there could be. I think that they'd admit that while military turn-based strategy games are fun, and there's definitely a very big market for that kind of game, it's at the same time a little niche. You know, there's a very dedicated group of gamers that are interested in that kind of genre, and they looked at what they were doing and said, how can we expand this, take this to a new level, and at the same time really take advantage of what was then sort of a burgeoning kind of experience, being online, being connected to other players from around the world at any given time. And that's what sort of led to what we're doing now.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, it's been quite successful. I was looking up some numbers. World of Tanks is currently enjoyed by millions of players globally. I dare say maybe even as many as 30 million.
So when you look at us now, we've only got one game out. So all the numbers you're seeing are basically based off of one game. So that game is World of Tanks. I think to date, we've got just north of about 35 million registered users for that game alone.
That's no small feat. Congratulations on that milestone.
Thank you very much. We're very proud of that.
We make 3 of that 30 million. So whatever percentage.
That's perfect. Every player counts.
Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask something a little bit different, but it is directly in correlation to this.
Sure.
And, I'm always fascinated by what people are doing elsewhere, and I'm not going to toot my own horn. I kind of know what, I'm familiar with the North American market, and I'm familiar with, obviously there's the Asian market of gaming. And I was doing a little research on this, and obviously you were saying the creators are from Belarus and Russia. And, I was reading it's obviously the game has had huge success in Russia. Mm-hmm. If possible, can you elaborate a little? What are there any similarities or differences between maybe the Russian market in Europe versus North America and Asia?
Yeah, we actually get that question a lot, and I think what you need to look at, and what I feel is kind of the answer for that, is that you look at the country of Russia, and you look at specifically the roles of military vehicles for that country in various wars. And if you look at Russia, it's primarily a tank culture. You look at World War I, you look at World War II, and even modern day, they have a lot of land. And a lot of land meant that a lot of their military conflicts were either fought by infantry or they were fought by tanks. And so when you look at a country like Russia, tanks are ingrained in the culture. Culturally, militarily, and in pretty much in every way. If you've ever been to Russia, you go to Moscow or any of those Soviet cities, you go into the streets, and the boulevards are incredibly wide. And they're incredibly wide because during the Soviet era, they would have huge military marches all the time down those streets, and they needed to be wide enough for tanks. So when you look at a country like Russia, you can see that, okay, tanks are really ingrained in the culture, in the history. And so I think that's probably the main reason why a game like World of Tanks has resonated so well with that country specifically. Europe, though, we have a lot of success in Eastern Europe, Poland specifically. We've got a huge number of players in Poland. Moving west, it becomes a little bit less and less and less tank focused. But I think one of the things that's great about tanks is no matter where you're from, they're pretty awesome. They're huge, they're heavy, they have huge firepower, and there's still a mystique, I think, around tanks that countries who haven't really been exposed to them much is one of the reasons why they find it so interesting as well.
And I personally, I find that fascinating, whether it be, a movie or a gaming project like this. I always like to know what the mindset of the creator is and, why they made certain decisions. And it actually makes a lot of sense in the end, as, it gives perspective on the product.
I hadn't really thought of it in terms of wars fought. Like, I mean, if you take a look at the MOBA genre, which is multi-user online battle arenas, League of Legends, that sort of thing, that has a very high concentration in Russia. And so when addressing your game, World of Tanks, I assumed that it was sort of just in part and parcel to that. I hadn't considered that there is a real world overtone that sort of enforces that. And from what you're saying, from what I can gather, World War II was a huge influencer. Most of the famous battles in Russia were fought with tanks between Eastern Europeans as well as the Russians. And it also would then make sense that the Eastern Europeans have this sort of tank culture because Germany had to march through them to get to Russia. And so tanks were a common sight. There are still people alive today who saw those things happen. And that's not necessarily something I considered. That's a really interesting point to make.
Yeah,
So,
it's like the Soviets in Russia during World War II and earlier, they had planes, but, they had such a huge landmass that a lot of what they did in terms of warfare and combat was in tanks. The last time I was in Minsk, actually, outside of the city, they have this huge place called the Stalin Line, which is essentially just an outdoor museum of armor. All sorts of tanks, planes, helicopters, everything you could probably think of. But it really does show you just how ingrained tanks are in the culture and the history.
My experience with tanks is either Axis and Allies and Study Hall or
Yeah.
Dominion Tank Police, the anime. So I'm pretty much, and I still enjoy the game.
Well, since that like I mentioned before, it's like tanks, even for a country like us who, most of our wars were fought by infantry and planes. Tanks still kind of have that mystique. Tanks are cool, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're doing well in the U.S.
If you're looking to be part of the fastest growing community in games today, head on over to amazon.com/free-to-play and check out wargaming.net's premier experience, World of Tanks. In just 24 months, over 35 million registered users from North America, Russia, and China have discovered this action-packed, strategic, tank-themed MMO. World of Tanks is taking the globe by storm. You can find out more about the expansive online battle arena by visiting worldoftanks.com. You can also head over to amazon.com/free, 2, and join the ranks of World of Tanks today.
And before, I don't want to stop talking about World of Tanks just yet before I ask you some other things about some other projects.
Sure.
I think James, before we started recording, had a very good question about World of Tanks and something new they introduced, but I'll let him take the floor on that one.
Sure.
yes, in an upcoming, I think it might be the next update, you guys are planning on implementing a new physics engine to change the way the game's played. You can't just roll up to the edge of a cliff and come to a dead stop. You'll actually launch yourself off the cliff, and other sorts of things that you'll have to account for, like your cannon bucking, those sorts of things. Now, I'm curious why. It's kind of a two-part question, so pardon me for that, but why now? After, I believe the game is 2 years old and you have this active user number, why now would you implement the physics engine? And also, were there any other competing systems? Are there things that you want to do to the game that you sort of line up on a wall and say, okay, well, we really want to do this, we really want to do that, but physics comes first? I'm just curious as far as maybe future plans you might have for the game, anything that you can talk.
Sure. I think in terms of why now, I think it's from the beginning, they've wanted to make sure that there's going to be physics in the game, that they're going to operate in a real world way. But I think the development team has been working hard to make sure that when they did it, it was done right. And as you mentioned before, so this is going to be content update 8.0. It's going to come out at the end of this month. It's easily the biggest and most important update to the game since it's launched, in large part due to the update in the physics. And I think the development team has been basically just trying to make sure that when they put this physics system in, it was done right. I know it's a good question as to why it wasn't in since the beginning, but I think it's been a lot of just sort of making sure that from a content perspective that the game is full, that there's lots of tanks, that players are having fun on a lot of different maps, and then after that is sort of all taken care of, go in and fine tune and make sure the experience is as robust and complete as possible.
And let me ask you this, kind of moving along. So you were saying earlier with Wargaming.net, this is their first title, huge success. Success would be an understatement. Looking at that, whether it be from a company or business perspective, are you guys surprised personally that a lot of other companies haven't jumped on the free-to-play bandwagon or getting their hands involved more with internet gaming?
I don't think I'm necessarily surprised. It's a fairly new space. I think being a new space, there's going to be early adopters, and then there's going to be people who come in later. And coming in later doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a bad job or you're making a bad product or anything. It's just a matter of timing. I think now you see a lot of companies sort of getting into the space, and we welcome them. The more the merrier. But I think one of the things that Wargaming prides itself on is that we are one of the trendsetters in this space. We were one of the first major free-to-play gaming companies out there, and we're happy to be in the position that we are, and we're always looking at every day evolving and changing and growing, not only what we're doing, but trying to find and implement ways on how to grow the space as well in terms of what we're doing.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, you guys have lined up, you've got World of Warplanes, which I believe is in beta.
Closed beta, yep.
Okay.
Which I may or may not have an invite to.
And then World of Warships.
Yep.
Now, before we get into those World of Warplanes and World of Warships, is it safe to say that even with your successes and whatnot, you know, sometimes with the success comes added pressure or, you know, added objectives or things that sometimes the company has to adhere to? You guys still have pretty much complete control over the projects you choose and pretty much have free roam to do what you guys love still?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we really pride ourselves on, is being in complete control of our games, our properties, and how we develop and publish them. You know, we're beholden to really no one but ourselves. So that gives us a lot of freedom and a lot of choice in terms of how we make our games, what the experiences are going to be, and ultimately what we want to deliver to the players.
That's exactly where you need to be. That's like when we talk to people like Double Fine and the Valve, they're like, we want to be the masters of our own destiny, and that's where you should be.
Yep.
And since you have an ear to Victor and Eugene, let them both know that I've always been a huge fan of the turn-based strategy games, Nectaris, Military Madness, and Anthony will attest. He'll know XCOM UFO Defense is in my top 10 of all time. Advance Wars on the Game Boy Advance. So if they ever want to dip their toe back into that marketplace, I would not object.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything new that you can share with us in regards to World of Warplanes?
There's quite a bit, actually. So, yeah, as you mentioned, we're in closed beta right now. I think we've had probably north of about 750,000 plus applicants to get into the closed beta. We're kind of letting people in small batches.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, letting people in small batches. You know, we're taking our time. We really want to make sure that the experience is going to be as good as it can possibly be. So taking a lot of time to get a lot of player feedback and a lot of response. If you've ever visited our forums for the game or anything like that, it's a lot of interaction with the development team, a lot of listening to what the players are saying about what they like, what they don't like, what they want changed, what they don't want changed. One of the big things that we've actually just put into the game recently was when we first launched the closed beta, it was pretty vanilla. We just had a few planes and a few maps there. It was basically just our way of giving the game to the players and being like, here, this is what it's going to be. Tell us what you think. But there wasn't a lot of like deep customization or any of those sort of elements in there. About a month or so ago, we actually sort of put into the game for the first time the real first taste of customization. And one of the things we really learned from World of Tanks, in having tens of millions of diehard, crazy, loving players for that game, is that we have a very huge core group of fans who love the depth of the upgrade system in that game. Like if you play World of Tanks, you know, you're not just driving a tank around. Like a tank is made up of a lot of various components that dictate how well it does in battle, how fast it is, how powerful the gun is, things like that. And a lot of our players in that game love that aspect. So we wanted to make sure that, obviously, when we transition to World of Warplanes, that customization depth is going to be there. It's going to be deep, if not deeper, than what's in World of Tanks. One of the things, though, we also learned from World of Tanks is that if you were a new player, the complexity and depth of the upgrade system could sometimes be hard to wrap your head around. There was a learning curve. There was a lot of different modules and upgrades to sort of manage and keep track of and know what they did. So for World of Warplanes, we're kind of taking a two-pronged approach. The first, which is geared more to those new players, is what we're calling a module system. So now every single plane in the game is going to have different modules. And the modules are basically pre-grouped sets of upgrades. So if my favorite plane is a P-51 Mustang, I can go into my hangar, which in World of Tanks shows you, like just like in World of Tanks, will show you all the planes you have that you own. You'll be able to go in there and select different modules that already have things like various guns, various bombs or rockets, body types, engines, and things like that grouped together. So if you don't really want to have to dig deep into the upgrade system and manage all of it, you just pick one of the modules that you like, and boom. As long as you have those parts purchased, your plane is going to be outfitted with them immediately. All of those modules are based on real life plane models, so they're not just mishmashes of random stuff that we thought would be cool on the plane that don't make any historical sense. They're all based on real history. So the P-51, you can have a model of a P-51 D-25NA, which was a real model in World War II. And for those people who really love the authenticity angle of the game, they're going to be able to really enjoy seeing those real models of planes and actually seeing the components that made them up. So that's geared more towards the newer folks who are getting into the game, learning the upgrade system. On the other hand, if you're like a hardcore veteran, you've played the game hundreds of thousands of hours, you'll be able to go into each one of those modules and customize each part if you want, or you can actually go in and create your own. So we're really trying to sort of cater to both folks.
I kind of like the idea of the modules, kind of give the new users kind of preset little packages to get them involved and make them feel more, feel more involved with what's going on right away.
Yeah, totally. It's like we don't want people to come in and be like, well, this is way too difficult and for me to understand. I'm not going to play. We want those people who are going to come in and be like, you know what? I love rockets. I just want to play with rockets on it. They're going to be able to find a module that has rockets, and they'll be able to go into the game and have fun. But for the guy who knows the planes, knows the models, knows them from history, knows the various components, we want them to be able to go into and have that freedom to pick and choose and outfit the plane that they want it to be.
It's funny you mention that because it's kind of like a little mini success or a little mini victory for users, like what you said, to get people involved or to get started right away. And I noticed that with gaming in general, doesn't matter what form of gaming, but people love success or they love to win. And I think that equates to them having fun, I think, for especially new users. And then for more of the veterans, so to speak, they'll take the time for more of the minutia and the finite aspects of the game and really grind and put the time in.
Yeah, exactly. Other multiplayer games, I have friends that will play a game and they'll just play one class just because they like a particular gun. They don't care about any other aspects of that class, but they just like the gun. And we found that in tanks too, and we want to make sure that in planes, if that's the route you're going to take, you're going to be taken care of.
That's really cool because I kind of view it from an opposite angle where I enjoy World War II history a great deal, and I'm not really familiar with armor or with planes. I do more infantry engagements and sidearms and rifles. That's really what I like to sort of read up on. Now, with World of Tanks, however, when I go and play World of Tanks, I can take a look at your model and all of the different modules, as you put it, or the different upgrades that go into any one of these given tanks, and I can actually go to Wikipedia and do the research on any tank that I happen to be piloting at the time, and it's actually it incorporates all the historical fact, which I certainly appreciate as someone who enjoys World War II history. So there are people, and I'm a living example, who are very interested in that era. They just don't know everything. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you I don't know everything, but you sort of give me a window into an area of the war that I'm not familiar with in a very, very accurate and also visual style. So I just really appreciate it. I just, throwing that out there.
If there's anyone in the world that are into the historical accuracy and detail of the tanks in our World of Tanks game or the planes, it's the development team. In World of Tanks, we've got guys in Minsk and in Belarus, they're going and looking over blueprints from actual productions of these tanks. They're looking at blueprints for prototypes. They're going to actual tanks and measuring the length of cannons, using radar to measure the thickness of armor and elements like that to make sure that the realism and the authenticity is going to be there. And necessarily, maybe the player doesn't want that, but for the players who do, it's going to be sort of the icing on the cake for them.
Well, I find it certainly to be the icing.
Yeah. I'm going to take a complete right turn here. I'm not going to break the conversation, but I'm going to say that's one of the things that really drew a lot of people into the original Need for Speed. I know we're going crazy here, but when Need for Speed first came out, it was built by car aficionados. It was built by Car and Driver magazine.
Yep.
And that's what drew me into the game, is that when I first got into it, it was on the 3DO, for gosh sakes, back in 96, 95. And I was like, I cannot believe how much car information is in here. And I learned a tremendous amount about the Acura NSX. I learned about the Lamborghini Diablo from the assets in that game. And it made me want to learn more.
Now, I'll say this, I hate to admit this, but I'm a man of greed and I'm sometimes never happy. But, it's just, there's World of Tanks. There's, we've got World of Warplanes. And, I've always got to push the envelope and think of the future. Do you guys ever envision a day where land, air, and sea, all of these different components come together in a whole brand new landscape?
This is easily the question I get asked the most. I think end goal, yes, but there's a lot of contingencies and a lot of things that have to come before that. Ultimately, like, as a gamer myself, everyone here's like pretty hardcore gamers. I agree. That would be completely awesome to have a game with tanks, planes, and ships. The thing that we need to do, though, first is we need to make sure that planes gets out the door and is awesome as good as it can be, and then warships gets out the door and is awesome as it can possibly be. So, I think ultimately one day I think we'd all love to see that happen. Are we planning for it now? No, because we've got two other huge priorities and two pretty important games for us to make sure get made well. One element, though, that actually does sort of tie all the things together now, if you play World of Tanks and you're familiar with how the global domination map works, it's basically a clan-based sort of system of having a world map where clans basically vie for control of different parts of the world. And right now, since we only have one game out, and that's World of Tanks, the map is only for clans that are playing World of Tanks, naturally. When World of Warplanes launches, that global domination map will add an extra layer to include planes. So if you're in a clan that's playing both games, you're going to have to start worrying about, well, how is my clan's domination and in control over, say, Great Britain or Europe doing in the air as well as on the ground? So that, like, from a cursory standpoint, that's how we're going to start to merge the things together at first. Having one big game with everything, that'd be awesome. There's a lot of gameplay challenges, though, that come along with that.
Right. Do you guys have a targeted date for World of Warplanes?
World of Warplanes is looking at end of this year, maybe early next year.
Oh, that's not bad. Well, James, what do you think about that, James?
I'm already playing it, so I don't got to wait. So.
Oh.
So, actually, one thing I do want to add too, another sort of element that is going to sort of bring all three games together. It's what we're calling the Wargaming.net service. It's basically a unified online experience for all three games. You're going to have one login and password for all three titles. And at the same time, probably the most interesting is that we're going to have a system in place that will let players share resources between all three games. We're not really 100% positive yet on what the ratio is going to be and which resource is going to be shareable, whether it's gold or free experience or credits. But if you're a player who only plays World of Tanks, we want to make sure that if you are interested in playing warplanes or warships eventually when it comes out, that you'll be able to jump in and at least have some sort of resource cushion or access right from the start.
And if you don't mind me asking, Chris, would it be safe to say for our listeners and Wargaming.net players for all of the latest information to check you guys out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube?
Yes, definitely.
You can log on to worldoftanks.com, just like it sounds, all one word. And also you've got a YouTube page at youtube.com/user/worldoftankscom. That's WORLDOFTANKSCOM.
Yep.
And if that's not enough, Twitter handle, World of Tanks. And last but not least, on Facebook at facebook.com/World of Tanks. Looks like you guys have all your bases covered. If you don't mind me throwing this in there, it's a little bit of a businessy question.
Sure.
With such huge success, World of Tanks, we're throwing around all these huge numbers, 30 plus million. I mean, these are numbers other companies would love. I mean, it's very respectable, admirable, to get such a large user base. Do you attribute that to just the internet? Like, what I mean by that is, because this isn't the type of thing where, you're seeing ad campaigns rolled out on, television, movies, that's kind of the stereotypical, avenue for other products. But I mean, to
Sure.
achieve that, do you feel that's all just the great community itself, the gamers enjoying the product, and just the internet itself?
I think it's a little mix of both. I mean, we do advertising, we do marketing all around the world here in the U.S., Europe, Eastern Europe, and Russia. But I think a good portion of it too is definitely player word of mouth. And if you were to ask Victor why he thinks probably one of the reasons why the game is a success is that as a company, one of the core philosophies for our development of our games is that focus on something and do it well. And I think a lot of times when you look at other games out there that are sort of in the MMO space, they have so much stuff going on. There's so many different elements to the game. And sometimes I think having so many different elements can cause issues in terms of making sure each one is balanced, or each one is fun, or each one is keeping the player compelled and playing. And for our game, specifically World of Tanks, we've really been dedicated to making sure that what do we do, which is provide awesome strategic team-based tank gameplay, and we make sure that we do that one specific element as excellently as possible. And so I think one of the things that our players will hopefully agree with is that we've been dedicated to providing that experience and following that mantra. And I think in doing so, we've helped them be able to tell their friends and tell other people that it's a fun game and they enjoy it and they should try it too.
When you treat your audience with respect and you basically cater to them, it's amazing what they can do.
Exactly.
750,000 people have, is that right? 750,000 people have asked to be part of the beta of World of Warplanes. Is that right?
Yep.
That is incredible.
That's unbelievable. And I was actually a part of the original draft. So like I got in, I was one of the first people to get in, and knowing that I was up against 750,000 people, that's a big number.
Cool. I'm glad you got in early.
Yeah, me too. Sorry, Neil, I didn't mean to step on you.
Not at all. Not at all. I was going to say to Anthony, the reason why he doesn't attribute it to the internet, strictly because when he came in there, they had, I think, 60 to 70 people online. But when Chris came in, he made everything possible. He brought along 37 million people.
Those are all my friends. Not even
very,
close.
very popular dude in Russia.
I wish.
All right. So the question I was going to ask, and I will close on this because I know your time is precious. And Chris, thank you so much
No problem.
for this evening. A quick question for you. When you got started with Amazon Game Connect, was that recently or is that?
Yeah, it's been fairly recent. I'd say probably within the past 2 months, month and a half.
The magnitude of that statement has just started to sink in with us of like how expansive this could grow your organization. Your team has got to be very excited about the prospects of Amazon Game Connect.
Definitely. I think any gaming company out there will tell you the more people you can reach, the better. And the Amazon Game Connect inclusion and partnership for us is just another great step for us to make sure that we can get our game to new players and show them what's made our games great so far. So definitely, we're extremely excited about that.
Yeah, we're very excited about the prospect of what that brings for us and for our audience who, as console gaming changes dramatically over the last just few years. I mean, within the last 2 years, console gaming has changed. PC gaming's always hummed around the back in terms of bringing games to the mainstream. And to be where with 35 to 37 million individuals, 750,000 people on board for the beta coming on board, and with projects in the pipeline, getting connected with a company like Amazon, congratulations on all your success, Chris, at Wargaming America.
Thank you very much. We're extremely excited. We've got a lot of great things coming up, and I think fingers crossed the future looks bright.
And last but not least, you're on this show. That's the chair.
You've won. This is like the throne of the internet here, and you sit upon it.
I'm actually going to retire after I get off this call. So.
The Double Plus Good Games Bonus Round podcast featuring Wargaming America's Chris Cook, ending communication.
Goodbye.